So I'll go ahead and say it. This summer is 31 years of youth ministry. So either I'm really called to it or have emotionally disorder. So you can choose. Still like talking to middle school kids. If I see a high school kid with chains, I ask where their dogs are. I mean, that's kind of what I do. And a lot of things have changed in 31 years. Some of y'all are old enough to remember that, especially if you were from the Midwest and it was 100 degrees, we'd always have a campfire on the last night, even if it's 100. Does everybody remember that? And we'd hold hands and we'd sing It Only Takes a Spark. And if you're a really good youth minister, at the very end, do you remember, I'll shout it from the mountaintops? Yeah, that's usually what happened because most of us are from non-clapping, hand-raising churches. When that would happen, at summer camp, the youth minister would say, excuse me, I'm going to sing that one more time. I'll shout it from the mountaintops. Do you realize people will be lost if we don't shout it from the mountaintops? I'm going to sing it one more time. You think of someone that you need to invite to church to hear Jeff Walling preach. I'll shout it from the mountaintops. Then we started having church, and we'd look around the fire, and we'd be sweating, and we'd say, I love you. I'll be there forever. I've met you for 3 days, but you are my best friend. And we would have that moment where we'd pull out a ball of yarn. Do you remember the ball of yarn? That was great ministry modality back in the day. You're Dutch Reformed. Here's what we would do. That ball of yarn, we'd throw it and say, okay, I love you, and I'm going to be there forever for you. Now, I want you to hold on to your part of the yarn. I want you to throw it over here. And then we'd make this large web. How many of y'all did that? The faithful. So we had this large web, and we talk about, okay, if you let go of that one part, then our group is going to be missing. What if I were to tell you that in 31 years of youth ministry, I want you to think about this. We train youth ministers better than ever. We have youth facilities. We have videos. We don't use overhead projectors. We don't even have to use color overheads. We got these things, screens, and moving videos. And we still lose 50% of our kids. So 20 years ago, facing that reality, before I started at the Hills, I went to Fuller and I studied Deuteronomy 6 to go back to the basics and began to talk about intergenerational. How do we change the way that we do youth ministry so that we don't lose our students? And out of that research from the Fuller Youth Institute, we all worked together and we developed something many of y'all are familiar with called Sticky Faith, where we researched the kids that were the 50% that made it, and we found, okay, here's some things that we can do to change what we do in youth ministry modality to grab these kids and hopefully give them some sticky principles. But then we realized that it really wasn't a youth ministry problem at all. It was a church problem. And so what happened is we took that research and we went to another level, and Jake was one of the authors, an incredible young theologian, also incredible researcher, and it was one of the greatest research projects in all of America demographically. Everybody was involved in it from every faith tribe, every demographic, men, women, gender, the idea of ethnicity, and growing young was developed. And we're going to talk about that here in just a moment, but last December, 40 thought leaders in youth ministry, and it's not a name drop. I need to let you know who was in the room. From all the major churches, from every brand that you can think of, and from Barna, Kinnaman was there. And Pine Top shared their information with us, and here's what they said. 1 million young people will walk away every year from religion. And your reaction was our reaction. So we started asking the question, what does the future of your church look like? One of the things we haven't been able to do is to look at our faith tribe and how we're doing in regards to these, what you're going to find out, the growing young competencies. And through a relationship with Fuller and LCU and Pepperdine, we're going to provide a unique opportunity that we're going to start today, and a year from now, we're going to be able to see how we're doing in the growing young modalities. So Jake, if you come up and share with us, please welcome my friend Jake Mulder.
Thanks, David. Some of you wondered if I was just David's bodyguard, but I'm not big enough to be David's bodyguard. On behalf of the Fuller Youth Institute, Fuller Seminary, it's an honor to be with you to talk about this endeavor that we're going to partner in for just a minute. If we can go back one slide to where it said, what does the future of your church look like? it's important to ground this. We're not just talking about what does the future of your youth ministry look like. We think that's a very important question, but this conversation we're going to have is not just about your youth ministry. This is a question about legacy. It is a question about the faith that we are passing on, that we're handing down to our children, to our grandchildren, this next generation that's going to step in and inherit the faith. And David pointed to some of the bad news. Well, what we decided to do was look at the good news. So if we can go to this next slide, we conducted this Growing Young study over a 4-year period. We were looking at 250 churches that are not declining or struggling, but are thriving with teenagers and young adults. That study included Church of Christ congregations from the very beginning. And one of our central takeaways comes up on this next slide. So one of our central takeaways from that 4 years of research is that this process, that one didn't look too good. That's all right, I'll narrate it. It's that growing young, engaging young people is not primarily about youth ministry. There it is. It's primarily about changing, it's about shifting church culture, okay? Now what that means is, of course, we need powerful camp experiences. Of course, we need inspirational, transformative mission trips. But we can't just look to the camps that happen over there, the mission trips that happen over there. We need to ask a question: what does it mean for us to be the body of Christ? What does it mean for us to be a church family? And what's the family that we are inviting young people into? What's the faith that we're inviting young people into? Our takeaways are summarized on this next slide, something we call the Growing Young Wheel. This is our diagram. I'm not going to cover every piece of it. Let me pull out a few pieces. What we learned from our 4 years of research is if you want to engage young people better, we found young people are drawn to churches that take Jesus' message seriously. Young people are drawn to churches where those young people are invited into processes for discipleship. Another takeaway, young people are drawn to churches that fuel a warm sense of community. What that means is young people are drawn to churches not just with great programming, but where young people would say, I am known, I am trusted, I am loved, I am supported. You start to look at that, and all of a sudden, this isn't just new research. This starts to sound like something very ancient that I hear you as the Church of Christ like to think of. Acts chapter 2.
I didn't know the Dutch Reformed.
The Dutch Reformed like it. We like Acts as well. But here was our... Thank you. Here's
you
our...
no longer need a bodyguard. Good
all right,
job.
I'm okay, thanks. I feel like an insider. This is great. Here's the takeaway, and it's so simple, it's scary. So we've conducted really the largest research project in recent history on young people in the church. And the new information that we're learning about what these churches do is they start to lean into some very ancient truths like the church that we see in Acts chapter 2, where young people are being empowered and entrusted, where people are doing good in their community, where we're getting back to this idea as church as family. Okay, well, if that's all so simple, then why aren't our churches all moving in that direction and filled with young people? What we want to do is invite you to take an assessment, to really start to understand your existing church's culture. I'm going to let Carole, our executive director, tell you about it in this 2-minute video, then David and I will let you know what's next. So if we can play the video, please.
Leading a church gets more challenging every day. We work hard to shepherd diverse groups of people who want to follow Jesus in a complex world. In the meantime, many churches are shrinking and aging. Some are disappearing altogether. Teenagers and young adults are walking away faster than we can keep up with. And we wonder, how do we become churches that young people discover and love? And how do we love teenagers and young adults well? Despite dismal trends nationwide, we've discovered hundreds of diverse, innovative churches engaging young people today. At the Fuller Youth Institute, we studied these communities and uncovered 6 core commitments that are helping them grow young. These strategies can be your strategies too, because growing young starts when you understand your church's current reality. Vetted by ministry experts and validated by researchers, our Growing Young assessment helps you take the first steps you need toward engaging young people. Listen to your congregation by inviting them to participate. Analyze the results with your team. Find out where you are strongest and where you need to grow. then move forward in courage and faithfulness. Don't let the challenges ahead overwhelm your hope for change. Start with reality. Start growing young.
So because of a great grant by the Pine Tops Foundation and the partnership between Pepperdine and Fuller and LCU, we're going to provide 30 churches with the opportunity to take this assessment. In just a moment, the card that you received, Jake is going to walk us through that. But here's what you received. 30 churches will be selected across the United States and Canada. I think we have some Canadians here. So we can get a great sampling to first understand how are we doing as a tribe, faith tribe, in the growing young competencies. What you will receive is a very generous gift of the assessment that you will take with your church. You'll receive feedback, and you'll also have 2 webinars with Jake and I to help you understand what you're seeing and some of your next step forwards. So we do hope that you will participate, and Jake will tell you a little bit about what to do next.
Yeah, so to be very clear, this is not the part where we move to the sales presentation. Let me reiterate what David said. Thanks to a generous grant from the Pine Tops Foundation and Fuller Youth Institute, this is something that's being provided free for use in your church for up to 30 congregations. If you received one of these cards, I would invite you to pull it out now. If you didn't get one, you can get one on the way out. And if we can put the slide up that has the website on it, here is what we would like to invite you to do. At this moment, right now, if you have a smartphone, we'd invite you to pull it out, to go to this website. There's a very short survey. Take you about a minute or 2, depending on how fast you use your smartphone. If you fill out this survey, all you're telling David and I is that your church might be interested in using the assessment for free. Okay, we just want to make sure we've got a spread of Church of Christ churches. We're not going to market anything. We're not going to start sending you all sorts of info. If you fill this out right now, you're just telling us we are interested in using the survey, and we will go from there. Once you mark your interest, David and I will follow up sometime by mid-June. Let those churches who get to participate know that you've been selected. We'll have a couple training webinars. We will show you how to use it at that point. You really have any time between now and next year's lectureship, next year's gathering to utilize it, because we really want to share those results next year of what we've learned about the Church of Christ broadly. So again, if you visit that website, you can do it now. If you don't want to visit the website now, that's fine. Take this card, take it home. You've got 3 or 4 weeks to go ahead and fill it out on your home computer. So otherwise, I'd invite you to do it now. And David, you want to tell us a little more about what this has looked like as you have utilized it?
All right, so serving as a ministry coach and a consultant in this, I've had the pleasure of working with 2 churches, and I'm going to go ahead and say our inside speak. Yep. I know the Dutch Reformed doesn't have such issues, but we do have a left and a right side. You know, we have the hand clappers, non-hand clappers, hand raisers, non-hand raisers, and all of that. This is safe for everyone to use. I've used it with both sides, and here's the common things that I hear back. 3 things. 1, it gives us a great place to start the discussion. You're going to actually see what's going on in your church, and we give you a demographics breakdown so you can't deny, and you can actually see this is where the information's coming from. So you get to start there, and also I've heard that everybody can agree to the competencies. We're not talking about worship modality, even though some things may come out. We're not talking about, who should be served. We're talking about the competencies that are very Acts 2. Thank you for using Acts. It's very common to us. I like to say it's a new, old way of doing church. And so we can all agree on these things. And then it provides a path forward. So you can practically do things to change your church community. And instead of just changing youth ministry and putting a finger in a leaking dam, we get to rebuild the dam. We get to rebuild so that maybe we can perhaps provide a different church culture where it's not just about us keeping something alive, but it's about building towards the future. Would you agree? Because 50% is too much, and this is an opportunity for us to be able to make a dent in that and to be able to impact this next generation. The Bible says that there was a generation that came after that of Moses that neither knew the great deeds of God and didn't know the stories, and that's why we had the book of Judges. We have to tell future generations about this Jesus message and what it looks like to walk in community. This is a great step for us to do together as a faith tribe and as your tribe in order to impact the 50% loss and change those numbers. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much.